What's up, guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Brandon Smith. Today we continue on with the tradition of anniversaries, with the case happening exactly 25 years ago today. But today's story is a little different. The mystery at the heart of this story is who is the deceased. I was inspired to do this case after spending literal hours reading up on all the people that have been identified this year through DNA, and it was honestly amazing. People such as Walker County Jane Doe from Huntsville, Texas, who has been unidentified since November 1980, were finally identified only in September 2021 as Sherry Jarvis from Stillwater, Minnesota. The progress that has been made in this realm has been exponential, which leads me to this case. An unidentified person I have been personally devoutedly interested in seeing identified for many years. But should I be, is the question. Should any of us be? That's what we're here to talk about today, so let's get into the details. Also, before I start, just an absolute disclaimer here. This story deals explicitly with suicide and elements of depression. As always, if these details are triggering for you in any way, shape, or form, please do not watch this video. My main concern is and always will be your well-being, and I do not want to compromise this in any way, shape, or form. Go take care of yourself, and please know that help is out there. Seek it out and make yourself a priority at all costs. I'll see you next time, but as for now, let's get into the video. The day is Wednesday, December 18th, 1996. The film Jerry Maguire is #1 at the box office. The song Unbreak My Heart by American songstress Toni Braxton is #1 on the Billboard charts. And in just 8 days, 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey will be found murdered in her suburban Boulder, Colorado home. Across the country, in Annandale, Virginia, a woman walks into Pleasant Valley Memorial Park. She proceeds to the area of the cemetery where children are buried. She places a thin sheet of plastic over the cold grass and sets up a small Christmas tree beside herself. She slides on a pair of headphones and hits play on a cassette player in her lap. After a few hours of contemplation, she slides a plastic bag over her head and ends her life. This day in mystery. Wednesday, December 18th, 1996 in Annandale, Virginia is cloudy and mild. With a daytime high of 15 degrees Celsius, the temperature is unseasonably warm for this time of year in Virginia. Pleasant Valley Memorial Park is a 13-acre cemetery in Fairfax County, just 27 kilometers from the White House. At 2:15 a.m., an elderly woman walks into a section of the cemetery named Babyland. She scans the tombstones for a clear spot and finds one directly in the middle of the territory. She props up an 8-inch Christmas tree and starts to work decorating the plastic holiday marker. She attaches a number of gold baubles and red ribbons to the tree. When she is finished with the decorative accoutrement, she lays down a clear plastic sheet on the ground and makes herself comfortable. The woman removes the lid from a silver flask and pours some alcohol into a juice bottle. She puts a cap of Valium on her tongue and washes it down her throat with the brandy-laced mango juice. Alone in life amongst the dead, the woman sits in silence. She slides a greenish-gray rucksack from her back and removes a cassette from its contents. The cassette is an audio recording of the 2,000-Year-Old Man skit, a comedy act performed by the legendary Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks. She slides the cassette into her General Electric Walkman and presses play on the device, and the silence in the graveyard is broken. She rifles through the backpack again and finds a small piece of paper. Typewritten letters fill the note and read, "Now I lay me down to sleep, soon to drift to the eternal deep. And though I die and shall not wake, Sleep sweeter will be than this life I forsake. She sets the poem down on the ground. Beside the poem, she slides two $50 bills into an envelope. She fills the envelope with another small piece of paper. This paper reads, "Deceased by own hand. Prefer no autopsy. Please order cremation with the funds provided. Thank you, Jane Doe." At 4:30 a.m., she goes to the backpack one final time. She removes a plastic bag and a roll of masking tape from the bottom of the container. She puts the flask and the two now empty bottles of juice into the sack and casts it to the side. With the stage set and satisfied with her decision, she puts the bag over her head and secures it to her neck with the masking tape. She lays down on the clear plastic sheet. As the comedy tape continues in her ears, the audience's laughter drowns out the sound of the woman's last breath. Just before 9 a.m. on December 18th, two security guards at Pleasant Valley Memorial Park begin their detail. They walk through the cemetery and find nothing out of the normal. They arrive at the section called Babyland and find a woman laying amongst the graves. The woman is wearing a teal Eddie Bauer hooded jacket. She is wearing two sweaters, a navy blue sweater over a red sweater. Underneath the sweaters, she is wearing a silk sleeveless shirt. On her legs, she wears navy blue wool knit pants over knee-high stockings. For jewelry, the woman is wearing two gold clip-on earrings, a gold Guess watch, a 14-karat gold ring with 4 jade stones, and on her neck, a metal chain with a bead and medic alert message. The accessory reads "No code DNR, no penicillin" in all capital letters. The woman's fingernails are painted red, and a backpack and Christmas tree sit meters from her person. From a distance, the woman appears to be sleeping. When the guards get closer, however, they see a plastic bag over the woman's head. They rush to her side. Promisingly, the woman is still warm. Sadly, when one of the security guards check for a pulse, none is found. They rush back to their station and report the woman's discovery to the police. Although Jane Doe had requested no autopsy, one was still performed. In Section 54.1-2973 of the Virginia Penal Code, it states that a medical examiner must perform an autopsy whenever someone dies from an apparent injury, act of violence, fire, or unusual circumstance. This is definitely an unusual circumstance, so despite the woman's wishes, by law an autopsy must be performed. Jane Doe's decomposition is almost non-existent, and the coroner places the woman's death at no more than 6 hours before her discovery. The woman died as a result of asphyxiation. The woman appears to be between 5 foot and 5'7" and weighs exactly 157 pounds. She is determined to be between 50 and 70 years of age. Her blood alcohol content at the time of her death was 0.14, and a goodly amount of Valium is also found in her system. Jane Doe's eye color cannot be determined because asphyxiation is extremely detrimental to the eye's composition. Her hair is described as curly and a reddish copper color. The color, as noted by the medical examiner, is particularly distinctive. The woman has an 8-inch surgical scar on her abdomen that curves around her navel. The death is ruled as a suicide. Police get the report from the coroner and wait for a missing persons case to come in that matched the woman's description. The missing person report never comes. They take a proactive approach and analyze the records of all recent missing people in the area. Again, nothing is found to match the woman. They take a more comprehensive look at the items found around their Jane Doe. Inside the woman's backpack, investigators find a pair of clear-framed bifocal eyeglasses with translucent lenses. They also find a silver flask and 2 empty juice bottles. The backpack also contains 2 additional cassette tapes and their respective cases. The tapes are Jeff Foxworthy's You Might Be a Redneck and Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Like the tape in the cassette player, the tapes are comedic audio performances. They next take a closer look at the woman's apparel. The majority of her clothes come from a brand called Classiques Entier, which is a name brand label exclusive to the upscale boutique Nordstrom's. The clothing items range from $100 to approximately $300. The cost of the clothing, well-maintained appearance, and relatively obscure location lead investigators to believe that the woman is not a transient. They commission a composite sketch of the woman and release it to the papers in the hopes of identifying her. In the media releases, they dub the woman as Annandale Jane Doe. Numerous tips are phoned in, and detectives follow up on the leads, but no one can positively identify the mystery lady. Who is Annandale Jane Doe? The original medical examiner was resolute in her determination that the manner of death was a suicide. Nevertheless, some people still believe that Annandale Jane Doe was the victim of a calculated murder. They believe that the entire scene was set up to look like a suicide as a clandestine way of disposing of the body. Proponents of this theory also suggest that this is why the woman has never been reported missing, as only the people known to her are the ones with the culpability in her murder. Police, however, say that they have found no evidence that anyone other than the Jane Doe was present at the site in Pleasant Valley Memorial Park where she was discovered. As such, they are steadfast in saying that they do not suspect foul play in the death of Annandale Jane Doe. Most people do believe that Annandale Jane Doe chose to end her own life. The real debate usually occurs in discussing the reason why. Some people suspect that prior to her death, she was diagnosed with a terminal illness, fearing the consequences of treatment, or possibly feeling that it was her time to go. In this situation, the woman decides to end her own life in her own terms. An offshoot of this hypothesis suggests that a murder-suicide hybrid is responsible for the death of Annandale Jane Doe. In this blended postulation, the woman enlists the help of a secondary figure in carrying out her own death. This theory has the woman in the company of someone else on the morning of December 18th. The other person is responsible for the mechanisms of the woman's death, but the woman is a willing participant all the same. Advocates of the assisted suicide theory point out that the Jane Doe's manner of suicide is extremely hard to accomplish on one's own. Additionally, no vehicle was found in the area belonging to the woman. So, they posit that someone must have driven her to the area in a vehicle and left in the vehicle after killing the woman. However, once again, this theory flies in the face of investigators' assertion that no evidence exists that anyone else was present at the time of the woman's death. When it comes to the Annandale Jane Doe case, the most common suicide splinter theory usually involves a child. Most people believe that the woman chose the Babyland section of the cemetery because she was grieving the loss of a child in some manner. A more specific version of this theory has the woman choosing to spend the last moments of her life next to the grave of her actual child. However, investigators point out that while the location of her body was in Babyland and close to the various tombstones that inhabited the area, she was not particularly close to one distinct gravesite. In the backpack, authorities also discovered a small Minnie Mouse fanny pack, one that would most likely be worn by a child, not an adult. The fanny pack was well worn at the time of her discovery and disparate from the expensive clothes that Annandale Jane Doe wore. So most suspect that the fanny pack must have had a sentimental connection to the woman rather than being something she wore. People also suspect that the scar on the unidentified woman is a Cesarean section scar, suggesting that she gave birth to a child at some point in her life. The resulting birth is what a lot of people think is the reason the woman found herself in Babyland on December 18th, 1996. Theories range from the child dying at birth, losing the child in its formative years, to being estranged from the child in adulthood, any of which depressed the woman enough into finally taking her own life. All right, so here is what I think happened. Annandale Jane Doe led a sad and solitary life leading up to the events of December 18th, 1996. This depression finally gets the best of her and she decides to end her life. The majority of dissatisfaction in her life has come as a result of her not being able to have children. I believe that the scar on her stomach is the result of a hysterectomy and not a cesarean section. The necessary procedure has dire consequences and the woman can no longer carry a pregnancy. As such, her motivation for being in Babyland on the morning of December 18th is not to grieve the loss of one specific child, but children in general. I don't think that Annandale Jane Doe is local to the area. People point to the fact that the cemetery was hard to find and not in a well-known part of Annandale. And while this certainly may be true, research was still a thing even in 1996. Internet access was definitely limited at this time. However, it and other resources were still available. One had to go only so far as the Yellow Pages and head to the cemetery listing. Here, a full glossary of local cemeteries would be available, including Pleasant Valley Memorial Park. This information was also not just exclusive to the local community. The population of Annandale in 1996 was approximately 51,000. I believe that in such a small community, someone would have been aware of this woman in some capacity, and would, as a result, be able to identify her. Of the 2 bottles found in the backpack of the woman, only one was native to the United States of America. The mango beverage found in the backpack of the woman was manufactured by a company called Luza. In 1996, it is manufactured exclusively in Belgium. This has led to many people speculating that the woman was from Belgium, and this is why she hasn't been identified. I don't know if we necessarily have to go this far. She may have been a world traveler, and on a specific trip to Belgium, she developed an affinity for the beverage. Once back in the States, she has the beverage shipped directly to her en masse. I believe the origins of Annandale Jane Doe are much more domestic in nature. As I mentioned earlier, the Washington, D.C. metro area is about 25 kilometers from Annandale, Virginia. The population of Washington, D.C. in 1996 is approximately 590,000. One individual's disappearance is much less noticeable in a population of over 500,000 people. Additionally, while the unidentified woman was heavily advertised in the local Virginia newspapers, the story was much less pervasive in the big metropolitan DC market. Unless this sort of story appealed to you or you sought out the information on your own, you would most likely not come across a picture of the unidentified woman from Virginia. So here is what I think happened. By December 18th, the woman has made the decision that her life has been unfulfilled and is no longer worth bearing. She looks for information online regarding local cemeteries with specific dedications to children. She stumbles upon a website for Pleasant Valley Memorial Park and her destination is set. She packs a backpack full of items and bundles herself up in warm clothing. She exits her stark Washington, D.C. one-bedroom apartment and heads across the street to a 24-hour Walgreens. She purchases an 8-inch Christmas tree, a package of gold baubles, and a few red ribbons. After settling up with the cashier, she enters a payphone booth just outside of the store. She orders a taxi, The cab picks her up in just a few minutes, and inside the vehicle, now, the driver asks her destination. She tells him Northern Virginia Community College and provides him with the address. The driver drops her off at the school's main entrance, and the red-headed woman pays the fare in cash. He thanks her, and upon seeing the tree stuffed under her arm, he wishes her a Merry Christmas. She smiles and exits the cab. She watches as the taxi turns the corner and disappears over the horizon. She pulls the hood of her jacket over her head and walks in the opposite direction of the school. In less than 10 minutes, she arrives in Babyland. She decorates the area and thinks back on her life. Alone in the dark morning, she drinks her favorite brandy and listens to her favorite tape. She tries her best to laugh along with the comedy routine as she so often did, but laughter escapes her now. The weight of her purpose here is much too heavy. With sunrise just a few hours away, she takes one last look at the tree amongst the tombstone and pulls a bag over her head. Quickly fighting her urge to reconsider, she seals the plastic around her neck with masking tape. Under the dark Northern Virginia morning sky, she soon drifts to the eternal deep. To this date, a total of 619 people have been excluded in the identification of Annandale Jane Doe. Many people have argued that a woman that went to such great lengths in life to obscure her identity should have these wishes respected in death. And while I personally make no qualifiers as to the appropriateness of these wishes, I do believe that identification and respect can both be mutually achieved. In the 2001 case of Lyle Stevick, we had a very similar state of affairs. This time, a young man ended his life and was very decisive in secreting his true identity. In 2018, the man was identified through DNA. Authorities notified the pertinent people in his life while continuing to respect his wishes and not make his identity public knowledge. Virginia investigators are clear. On December 18, 1996, the woman now known as Annandale Jane Doe chose to end her life. As such, no reward is offered in this case, as they do not believe a crime took place. The investigation into who she was does, however, continue to this day. Thank you so much for listening to the story of Annandale Jane Doe. Please like and subscribe. As always, I'm very interested in hearing your opinions in the comments. Do you think Annandale Jane Doe should be identified, or should respecting the wishes of the dead trump any investigation? Should I have even done this video? Let me know, and before I go, please know that you are a wonderful individual who is capable of good. If you are struggling right now for any reason, please know that we are in this together, and you are here for a reason. As such, please be kind to yourself and everyone you come in contact with. I'm Brandon Smith, and I'll see you next time.